There are three pillars of nutrition in my opinion, and they go something like this: calories, macros, and micros. Now, if you're trying to gain weight or lose weight, pretty much every single one of us focuses on one of those three. But in my opinion, every single one has its own place within the nutrition system, and they all do different things. It's worth looking and noting at every single one individually, even though one usually does in some way attribute to the other. Whether it's macros, whether it's micros, whether it's just calories, there's a lot that can be done. And so in this video, I just want to break down exactly what calories, macros, and micros are, why they are the three nutrition pillars, in my opinion, and exactly what they mean for you. Let's get right into it. Okay, so first, let's talk about the calories. I consider these the first of all nutrition pillars, and I'd even consider them more of a nutrition hierarchy. Calories are the first things that I'm looking at. When I'm looking at food, when I'm trying to gain weight, when I'm trying to lose weight, calories are the one thing that I'm looking at first and foremost. And in order to do this with all subsequent macros and micros needs, I'm going to be using pasta, cheese, and fruit. Specifically this banana. All of them will get my point across quite differently, if you don't mind my water there. All of them will get my point across a bit differently, but it'll give you a better understanding of all of the different kinds of different calories, micros, and macros that you might be seeing on a day-to-day basis. Now, if you haven't noticed here, I haven't brought in ultra-processed food, even though that's the thing I drone on about in pretty much every single video. But even with those, maybe I'll touch on them at the end of the video. So stay tuned for that. First things first, calories. Exactly what are they? Basically, calories are the energy requirements to burn some kind of food. They grab food, they burn it, and then they see how much heat is required essentially to burn the food. And then that translates to calories. So every single food, depending on how dense it is, has a different calorie number basically assigned to it. And the easiest way you can tell how much calories are in any kind of food is to quite simply bring the food up, look at the back, and see what it says. Now here in England, usually we're looking at calories per 100 grams or per serving. For example, this cheese has 88 calories per 30 grams serving, which is quite low for cheese, but that's because I like to get the 50% reduced cheese from Waitrose. No, this isn't a sponsorship, but it's worth noting that actually it's a pretty good price and the macros are absolutely insane. There are no additives and protein's high, but we'll go into that just down the line. First, calories. Why are we looking at calories? Well, calories dictate whether you're going to be gaining or losing weight. That's basically it. There's nothing more to them. If you eat more calories than you maintain, you're going to gain weight. And if you eat less calories than you maintain, you're also going to lose weight. Exactly. So if you're just primarily looking to gain or lose weight, calories is the baseline for that. You don't really have to look at absolutely anything else. If you just look at calories and you maintain some kind of deficit or some kind of surplus, you're pretty much fine to just gain and lose weight. This is basic. You could be gaining muscle, you could be gaining fat, depending on all other activities that you're doing. You could also be losing muscle and you could also be losing fat. Again, depending on all other activities that you're doing. Now, calories, that's basically them. They're very surface level when it comes to nutrition. There's nothing more to them. So exactly how much calories is in different types of food? Well, in complex carbs, for example, or in ultra-processed food, you're going to usually find that it's more calorie dense. For example, this right here, the pasta, per 100 grams, comes at about 158 calories, which is quite a lot if you know just how dense the weight of this is. You could eat so much of this and it goes down very quickly, and so the calories rack up very quickly as well. Now I've already mentioned, per 100 gram serving of this block of cheese, it's about 293 calories. But while that sounds like more, eating cheese is usually more difficult because it usually tends to be denser. So to eat 100 grams of this cheese, you're looking at roughly eating a third of it, which is roughly this much. Now, I don't know about you, but if you're eating about this much cheese in one serving, that's an impressive feat if you ask me. Personally, I eat about this much every time I eat. So I'll usually have 2 servings maybe. 60 grams or even 1 serving, 30 grams will still net me a good protein count because that's what I'm looking at. And this banana is on average between 60 and 80 calories. Quite light, but even when it comes to fruit or vegetables, this is quite calorie dense. Now let's move on to macros. This is where things tend to get a little bit more interesting. We're looking at the 3 primary macros: protein, fats, and carbs. And each one has a separate job to do in the body. So I'm going to go in the order of least importance to me personally, but make no mistake, every single one of these 3 has its place in the human nutrition system. Each one does a separate thing. For example, carbs are usually used for energy, but fat can also be used for energy when carb sources, glycogen sources, are taken out of the mix. Usually that'll activate something called ketones, and your body uses them as fuel as well. Now, glycogen is just an easier form of energy for your body to activate with, and so that's usually what happens. It jumps into your glycogen stores, which are stored in your muscles or your fat, and that's where primary energy is consumed. Carbs also tend to be the most calorie dense, and so in the past, biologically speaking, our ancestors would eat carbs because they're usually the most filling. Pasta, wheat, barley, rye, all of these foods are quite easy to produce and quite easy to manage, and so that's usually what people would eat, especially after the agricultural revolution. When you're looking at carbs, you're looking at things like complex carbs. You're also looking at things like fruits and vegetables. That's usually where the carbs will come into. But there's a difference in the quality of carbs that you're consuming. For example, complex carbs are great to fill you up, and they're great for energy, and also really good when it comes to taste, right? Yes, but are they nutrient dense? Usually not. In today's world, we usually need to fortify these kind of carbs in order for them to give us some kind of nutrition. So let's look at this pasta. This has wheat. That's about it. Durum, wheat, semolina. Not to be mistaken with salmonella, because it's not. That's about all this has in there. And it's very calorie dense, but nutritionally, it's lacking quite a lot. Again, great to fill up your meals. Now, if we look at the bananas, I'm just gonna put up everything in a banana right here that it provides you with. Reminder, it's also low in calories. This thing, absolutely amazing, especially before the gym. And if you want to be hopped up on nutrients primarily. If you don't want to feel that full, this also works. If you want to work better throughout the day, this probably will work better for you. But both have their place. And as a little side note, fruits and vegetables are also packed with nutrients. And that's where you're going to get a lot of the nutrition content for your daily requirements. I'm 100% all for them, but I do prefer fruits myself. So go for whichever one you want. Each fruit, each vegetable contains something different. And every once in a while, a little complex carb here or there doesn't hurt either. Try a sweet potato, how about that? Next, I'm looking at fats. Now, fats hold something called fat-soluble vitamins. Basically, vitamins and nutrients found in fats. Primarily found in saturated fats. So here we're talking butter, ghee, tallow, olive oil. Basically, they're saturated with some kind of nutrients. That's how I take it anyway. On the more animal side of fats, you're gonna find fat with some kind of meat. Tallow does come from beef. However, reminder, even in beef cuts, you're gonna find layers of fat. And that does add to your fat content of the day. It's usually full of some kind of vitamin and some kind of mineral. On the other hand, you have unsaturated fats. Now, I'm not gonna go into mono or I'm not gonna go into poly either, but primarily we're gonna look at unsaturated fats as well, because in today's world, these are pretty much the 2 fats that we're going for. Now, in the unsaturated category, you have things like sunflower oil, rapeseed oil, and pretty much every single one of the oils that looks completely neutral. Fats have their own place in the food regulatory system, in the nutrition database. In fact, you're also gonna find certain vitamins and certain minerals like omega-3s and omega-6s that in certain quantities are necessary for humans, but in others are absolutely detrimental to us. On the other hand, you'll find stuff like omega-3s, which I just mentioned, and they're absolutely amazing. They provide so many health benefits. These kind of fats you can usually find in avocados and fish even. So that's layer number 2. Basically, fats are how we function. It's how our hormones function as well. You get the right types of fat in you and your hormones are usually going to be quite stable. So then I go on to the most interesting part, and the most interesting part for me because, well, I tend to frequent the gym and I tend to work out quite a lot. Proteins. Now, why are they the most interesting part? Personally, I believe that aside from vegetables and fruits, proteins, even over them, are actually the most nutrient, mineral, and vitamin-packed foods out there. They contain virtually everything you need, which is one of the reasons why carnivore diet does work. Now, take dairy for example. I'm just gonna look at this one, right? For 100 grams of this bad boy, you're getting roughly 33 grams of protein. For an average person, that's a lot. And for the amount of calories that are in this, it's absolutely amazing. I like to consider a 10-to-1 calorie to protein ratio good. Any protein to 10 calorie ratio above that, I consider great. And anything below that, up until 0.7 grams of protein for every 10 calories, I consider all right. And anything below that is basically trash. This right here, 293 calories and 33 grams of protein. So for every 10 calories in this bad boy, I think you're roughly getting 1.1 grams of protein, which is goated status if you ask me. Now, not only is protein extremely nutrient dense, it also fills you up. Now, aside from that, protein is important for one very important thing. And that, my friends, is muscle protein synthesis. AKA, how much muscle are you building? Why is this important, you ask? Very simple. As we get older, we begin to atrophy. Having more muscle on our bodies and having it be working muscle, more importantly, aka it gets some kind of movement, means that we atrophy far slower. We also not only tend to atrophy far slower, but tend to look way younger when we eat more protein. Proteins like cheeses, beef, meats in particular, also have the full amino acid spectrum, which is extremely important, but I'm going to get into that during the macrophase. Now, your macros are essentially going to dictate how you look. Calories basically dictate whether you weigh more or less, but your macros actually dictate the way you look. Are you going to have more muscle or are you going to have more fat? Now, it's not that basic. You also need to be working out in order to build muscle, but your macros will dictate exactly how you look. Because if you don't get enough protein, well, then I'm sorry, my friends, you ain't getting enough muscle. And you're still going to gain weight, even if you have so much protein, if you don't work out at all. One way or another, protein is very important. For example, if you're at a calorie deficit, eating enough protein while working out means that your body tends to prefer fat over muscle for energy. Now, that's the goal. When you want to burn fat, you need to deplete your glycogen stores in order for your body to then begin to use your fat stores. But your body also quite likes to use your muscle, because if you're not using the muscle, it's not necessary. And so you atrophy as you lose weight. What's preferable is to have high levels of protein and high levels of activity in order for your muscle not to atrophy and for fat to be the primary source of energy for your body once the glycogen stores are depleted. And then finally, we come down to the micro level of nutrition. Here's where things get really interesting and a little bit complicated. Now, when it comes to macros, you're looking at a whole array of chemicals, vitamins, minerals, enzymes, nutrients, a plethora of different things that basically dictate one thing. They dictate how your body actually feels from the inside. So even though you can eat a crap ton of protein from beans, you're never going to get your full amino acid spectrum. And so chances are you'll need to find some kind of supplement. Similarly, if you're not eating avocado or fish, you're not going to get your omega-3s. And that's great when it comes to hormone regulation and even protection from the sun. Minerals, vitamins, these enzymes that I'm talking about, that's literally what our bodies run on. Our bodies don't just run on calories, they actually run on these micronutrients. At the micro level, if we don't get the kind of nutrition that we need, our bodies might be full, but our minds say we need more and more. This tends to lead to craving. And so when you have nutrient-dense foods, usually you tend to crave less. It's one of the reasons why protein is so filling. Because when you're eating meat specifically, you're going to be getting a lot of nutrition. And that's why they sate you for longer. Not only are they more dense as foods, and so they require more energy from your body to actually break them down, leaving them in the stomach and in the system for longer, they actually hold a lot of nutrition. So up here, your body isn't craving for anything. It's not starved for anything that it needs. And how about the essential amino acids in the cheese? Leucine, isoleucine, lysine, thiamine, all of this stuff, it all goes into regulating exactly how your hormones and how your body actually works. A lot of amino acids tend to help the body recover better. Leucine, if I'm not mistaken, actually help your body activate something called satellite cells. And these satellite cells work as tiny workers, right? They split in two, and then one of them goes off and is used to repair your body. The more of that essential amino acid you get, the better you feel, because your body recovers faster after an intense gym session. And then you have foods that lack micronutrients, but are still high in calories. Our bodies don't really know what to do with foods like this. Even though they're delicious, they don't really provide much value. Take, for example, an entertainment video. Now that might make you laugh, and that might be valuable to you, but in the long run, you're not actually learning anything, and so the value is quite low. Of course, within reason. There's plenty of value that comes with laughing as well, but you get my point. Micronutrients are extremely important. They are the things that literally fuel your day-to-day activities. They're the things that are going to regulate your hormones. They're the things that are going to regulate your cravings. They're the things that are going to regulate how you feel on the inside. Whether you feel bloated, whether your skin is irritable, whether your bowel is irritable, what your health is like, whether you're susceptible to sun damage or not. Yes, even that. Omega-3s have actually been shown to protect rats from UVB rays. Natural protection comes in the form of foods, and so for a lot of people, if you eat right, you can reduce the SPFs. But whatever your goal is, calories, macros, and micros, all three are absolutely tied together, and they all matter. Let's say you want to lose some weight and look a bit more chiseled, perhaps look a bit better, but also you're doing it because you want to feel better. More importantly, you want to be in a calorie deficit, so you need to look at the calories you're consuming. Even if you're consuming more protein, even if you're consuming the right micronutrients, you still want to be eating less calories. And so you have to look at calories on that level. Now let's say you also want to hold more of your muscle. It's just a health thing, and also maybe you want some strength. Okay, great. Well, now you have to look at your macros. You want to make sure you're hitting your protein goals, 2x your desired body weight in kilos. Yes, especially if you're in a calorie deficit. Eating enough protein is what's going to keep the muscle there. Eating enough carbs and enough fats is what's going to give you the energy to go out and train, or to go out and have a good day even. But all of that is for naught if you don't have your micronutrients on point. If you don't have your micronutrients on point, then even though you might lose weight and even though you might look better, your skin could break out. Your health could even take a beating, and maybe you look better on camera, but inside you're gonna feel worse. So all three nutrition pillars definitely have their place. Now, if you have something to say about the topic, please leave it in the comments below. Regardless, hit the like and subscribe button, it'll help me greatly. And until next time.